Hello folks, this is Frank and Dave back again on YouTube. While my albatross is drying and ready for more assembly due on it, I decided to sneak in a couple of builds of the past that I've done. Here's one build that you rarely ever see and probably haven't seen at all. At least I haven't seen any on the internet. I've searched the internet endless on end. I can never find any builds of this airplane, so I guess I'm the only dude in the world that's got this. I built this 45 years ago using Paul Matt's volume number 3 reference of prop-driven aircraft from 1930s to 1940s, and he had a chapter of all flying boat plans. Martin Mars, the PB-2Y Catalina, the PB-2Y Coronado, the short Sunderland flying boat, and the Martin Mars. And a lot of my builds I've done scratch was off that book. The same thing with this one here. Now the topic for today's YouTube presentation of the builds of the past is my consolidated PB-2Y Coronado flying boat, a scale of 172. This is a scratch build I've done. I've done this precisely 43 years ago using my favorite materials of choice: blue foam board, sheet plastic, and wood. The plan source, as mentioned earlier in this video, was Paul Matt's Volume 3. A little history of the airplane before I present the model to you. The PB-2Y Coronado flying boat was supposed to be the successor to the PB-Y Catalina, but the Navy seen no sense of scuttling the Catalina, but the Catalina was a very proven aircraft and was a very worthy aircraft and was a very good aircraft. And there was no need of getting rid of it. So the PB-Y remained throughout the Second World War and after the Second World War, and also become in the hands of private collectors because it's such a wonderful airplane. Even a small amount today is being flown and being displayed throughout the country. A lot of them are in museums. A lot of them are private collectors as real flying machines. The Coronado entered service by 1938. By 1940, the United States Navy wanted at least 40 examples of this aircraft because it was big. And during the flying boat race, the United States Navy felt for more bigger flying boats. Flying boats were very popular in that era. They had the reason being is because they had the range, and they could, and they had a lot of good duties that they could do. They can land on water, rescue, and use them as long-range patrol reconnaissance aircraft. The Coronado sported 2 different theaters. It sported more or less as an anti-submarine patrol bomber, and is mostly used as a transport or evacuation aircraft or an air ambulance. The wingspan of the PB-2Y Coronado was 115 feet, length all the way from the tail to the nose is 82 feet. They carry a crew of 7. Carry a crew of personnel, 60 personnel. Underneath the wings, they had the same configuration as that of the short Sterling, had wing bays. This aircraft was capable of carrying bombs and mines. Again, this aircraft was kept out of the war zone. It was more or less used all the way from the States to islands to the South Pacific during the war. The short sun of the, excuse me folks, the Coronado was very short-lived. After the Second World War, they were more or less stricken from the Naval Register and they're sold for scrap. None of them ever came in the hands of collectors. None of them ever made it to museums. 90% of them were used as a man-made reef off of Coronado Islands, off of San Diego, California. And as man-made reefs, a lot of them were turned into razor blades. Only one survived out of all the Coronados that were built. Howard Hughes, the late great Howard Hughes, obtained one of the flying boats. He got the idea off the Coronado to build the Spruce Goose. But the Coronado was a very sluggish water performer. It had a top air speed of 225 miles per hour, the same speed as that of the Martin Mars. The power plant consisted of 4 Pratt & Whitney double row 1,400 horsepower engines each engine. Wow, enough power for takeoff. The Coronado had a different feature compared to the PB-2Y 5A. During the water takeoffs, it had a vent underneath its hull. When the Coronado took off and right down its step where it took off, it vented the bottom of the fuselage to keep the water from suction to the bottom of the fuselage, keeping it on the water. The PB-2Y 5A Catalina didn't have that because it wasn't realized until they later on knew they took what the problems was for the Catalinas to get out the water, because on a Catalina flying boat, when they took off, it took miles and miles for it to get out the water because of the suction. So when the Coronado was being designed, underneath the hull by the step there was a vent that kept the water from sticking to the bottom of the hull. That way the ship can actually virtually take off without having no holdback of the water. Only one example is left today. It's in a museum in San Diego. It's Mr. Howard Hughes's Coronado that he had. I remember seeing it plenty of times in Long Beach. He was on the tarmac out there in a red oxide preservation color. The wings were taken off. All that was left was a fuselage on his beaching gear and the horizontal stabilizers and rudder. After the death of the late great Mr. Howard Hughes, he had a few workers that used to work for Consolidated Aircraft during the war, got together and took the aircraft and restored it to its natural condition. The aircraft that's being modeled right here is the PB-2Y Coronado. This aircraft was famous for one reason, because it shuttled Admiral Nimitz all the way from the States to Pearl Harbor. When the Pearl Harbor was attacked by the Empire of Japan, they had no long-range aircraft that could be able to fly all the way from the States to Pearl Harbor. So Admiral Nimitz was shuttled on this flying boat all the way to Pearl Harbor to see the damage that was done. Also, he was there to relieve Admiral Husband Kimmel, who was the scapegoat at Pearl Harbor. Here, right here before you, is my 1/72nd scale PB-2Y Coronado flying boat, all its splendor. The props are done by making disc from clear acetate, simulating the spinning of the props. The paint schedule on this aircraft is a 3-tone, white undersides, intermediate blues on the side, and non-specular sea blue on top. The English use these as well. Their camo is similar to the American Coronados. They're more or less sea gray, slate gray, and all white, like that of the short Sunderland, a flying porcupine. If you look very closely at the tail of this aircraft, it resembles that of the B-24. What they did, the rudder assembly on this aircraft was taken from the design of the B-24. The floats on this aircraft are retractable, like that of the PB-2Y Catalina flying boat. They retract to reduce drag. This aircraft took exactly 5 months to build. It's one of its kind. Here is the top view of it. As you can see. Boy, I wish I had a better camera, guys. I keep on telling you I'll get a camera, but eventually it'll get here. And here's the underside. Try to get close to this webcam here, folks, so you can see the wing bays. There they are right there. Right here, these are like a short Sunderland. They're wing bays. This is where the bombs are at. They used that's where they had the bombs and the mines at in this aircraft. Well, folks, it looks like Grandfather Clock over there is giving me the cue. I wish these YouTube presentations were longer. I hate to cut you off short on this, so you get the general idea how this is, how the model is and everything. And I got another one coming up in a few minutes. And I'd like to appreciate everybody out there with your comments and replies, and tuning in and viewing my Coronado flying boat. And I hope maybe we'll be able to get a flying boat build going on, folks. I got an air-fixed short Sunderland over here that's dying to be put together. But anyway, folks, thank you for tuning in, and thank you for your comments. And may God bless, and we'll catch you on the next video presentation. Bye, fellas.